Welcome to Rise, Season 4. From Switzerland, where thousands of university students, all vaccinated, begin classes again tomorrow, I am Professor Demian Hodari of the recently renamed EHL Hospitality Business School, Lausanne.
And from the beautiful Emirate of Dubai, a very warm good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salam alaikum. My name is Anita Mendiratta. Delighted to be back for Season 4 with Professor Hodari. And I must say, Demian, who would have thought our 100-day project is on day 519 as we kick off Season 4. Remarkable to think that all these months later, all these next normal later, here we are. But Rise is committed to providing a place to stay inspired, to stay insightful, and to stay informed about the next normal and how we all stay committed to this incredible industry itself. While I say that, it's also, as we're in Dubai, we are here for the Arabian and African Hospitality Investment Conference. Incredible acknowledgement to Jonathan Worsley from Bench Events for kicking off this live event. And it's just 12 more sleeps, Demian, until Expo 2020 starts. Remarkable that this global event is going to be happening. We're so excited. We're global. We're now live on Facebook and YouTube, so people can join us over and above being on the Zoom platform and see every week what's happening in the Rise conversation. Actually, every other week, we keep people anticipating. So, sir, tell us what's happening this time.
You know, you've arrived when you're on Rise, but also when you've had a career as illustrious as that of our guest today, Jerry Inzerillo. I think what we really wanted to focus on a little bit today, Anita, was all the concerns and doubts people have about the industry right now and about their place in the industry. And hearing from a leader like Jerry today, I think will reassure a lot of people about not only about the situation the industry is in right now, but about its future and their role in it. And so that's what we're focused on today. But of course, as always, before we get to our guest, we've got a bunch of things to do. First off, as always, our first poll of the day, our only poll of the day here in Season 4. So over to our guest to answer the following question, please. In the last 100 days, which of the following that you have done has made you feel most like things are normalizing? So basically, since the end of Season 3. Please choose one of the following. So I'm excited to see the results, but new to Season 4, we're going to make our audience wait a little bit to see the results till later in the show, partly so those people watching on YouTube or on Facebook or on eventually LinkedIn who want to send in a comment, we can sort of tabulate those as well. So we'll come back to those results in a little while. Anita, over to you.
So where in the world are we? As we always do, we look at what do people need to know right now about what's happening in the world. And importantly, when we look at today, can you believe it is September 20th, 2021 already? What do we feel we need to know? So normally, statistically, I would talk about the travel and tourism stats. The fact that 2/3 of the world are easing the borders, but 1/3 are going into lockdowns. And still there are red list status applications being put on different countries. I might talk about the fact that people are fearful of travel, but it's not just COVID-19, it's regulations changing. That's what's causing the fear. Or I could talk about the number of countries, airlines, airports, businesses that are saying, no, you can't become a part of it unless you're double vaccinated or fully vaccinated. But we're not going to talk about that. I want to talk about something interesting in the next normal, because I know, Demian, you love the airline stats, but I thought I'd challenge this time. And I want to talk about ad spend, because if you look at it, ad spend is a great indicator of how lifestyle is changing. And what we found last year in 2020, and this is staggering, WARC data estimated that the work from home lifestyle, everyone being grounded, retail, online shopping only, caused a $63.4 billion US dollar drop in advertising, because ultimately no one was going anywhere. But this is where it becomes exciting. And these statistics show that, especially if you look at transport and tourism, almost a 20% growth rate in advertising, because people are getting out again. They're making those choices for not just bucket lists, but wish lists. Retail is growing up almost 6%, and automotive, which I thought was really interesting, because people are much more looking at driving lifestyles, whether it's working from home and occasionally going to work in the offices, or more importantly, leisure activity. So this was an interesting indication of where lifestyles are starting to open up and yet still remain closed. Sadly, however, the industry, the global ad industry, doesn't think there's going to be any change until 2022 to get to 2019 levels. But it's a great sign of what are people actually willing to look at in terms of communication that affects their lifestyles. And clearly, the world is opening up. What have you got to show, sir?
I have a single number to share, which is number 10 billion. This is what Bill Gates' investment group, Cascade, paid for or valued Four Seasons at, as he took a controlling interest in the company. Already a major shareholder, he now controls the company. And I thought this was pretty interesting for a couple of reasons. One, trying to be a bit more optimistic, a bit more positive this season. Anita, I did have a different slide before I was going to show about it. A loss of $23 billion in brand value across the chains. But I like this number better because I think it's indicative a little bit of what people are thinking about the industry. People are becoming more optimistic. We're more bullish about this, not just at the ultra luxury like Four Seasons, but across the industry. And I also think it suggests that not only are we optimistic about the future of the industry, we're passionate about it. I'm sure there were other investments that this group could have undertaken, but people want to be involved in travel. They want to be involved in tourism. They see how important this is to humanity and to the general economy and to coming out of this pandemic, the mental and psychological ramifications that we've had. People want to travel, and I think Bill Gates' group is recognizing that this blip that we had this year is not a long-term problem for the industry. So positive reinforcement for the industry. People should be seeing this as what it is, a very wealthy and intelligent man in his group recognizing that our industry has a bright future. So that's the number that I chose.
Quick one, Demian, I want to say, because I was thinking about you today at the opening of AHIC and how you're in the right industry at the right time, especially from the academic side, because ultimately, no matter what we talk about travel and tourism trends and optimism and sentiment, there's something about the hospitality and especially the hotel development industry, because that's a real case of show me the money. And where confidence is, when people are prepared to put millions and billions down to actually invest in new developments, that's when you know something important is happening somewhere. So I love the fact that you've brought this up, because ultimately sentiment is one thing, investment, billions, is another, and that talks confidence. So thank you for the link to that.
Show me the money, Anita, show me the money. And now time for our intelligence partner, co-stars Jan Freitag sharing STR data about the hotel industry in his RISE data dash. Here we go.
Hello, RISE. Welcome back. Hello, Anita. Hi, Demian. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me back again with our 3-minute data dashes. I have 2 slides for you today. The first one is the new STR forecast for RevPAR recovery. And what you're seeing here is that STR is now suggesting that the 2019 RevPAR will be hit in 2024. That's a little bit earlier than what we had said last time around. The reason for that is because the second quarter data this year was so much stronger than we had anticipated, more room demand, more room rate than we had anticipated, and that then permeates throughout the forecast. So the forecast now suggests 2024 is when we hit that 2019 RevPAR level. But the asterisk to that number is that this is not inflation adjusted. Inflation, of course, is a big topic in the United States and around the world as well. We're not super worried about it. We think it's going to normalize back down to the 2% level that the US has seen historically. But nonetheless, it implies that the 2019 RevPAR, when adjusted for inflation, will not be hit until 2026 or 2027 or so. But overall, this is certainly a good trajectory, and we're hopeful that it will come to pass. The second data set is not from STR or COSTAR. It is from, and I have to read this, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Okay. And what they track is climate disasters and weather disasters that cost the US taxpayers and insurance companies over $1 billion. And what got a little bit lost in COVID in 2020, when we were all so focused on infection rates, is that the number of climate disasters costs that had an over $1 billion impact was the highest it has ever been, ever, 22 of them. I don't think this is changing. And I urge you to have conversations with the people you bring onto Rise to make this a specific topic and talk about climate change, but also talk about resiliency and what travel, tourism, and hospitality professionals are doing to keep their assets, their staff, and their guests safe in an environment where climate is just getting more and more extreme. And I'm, of course, happy to be part of that conversation. Thanks again for having me back. Have a wonderful show. Talk to you soon.
You have to admit, Demian, he's a sweetie. And I must say, I love the fact that firstly, STR and Jan coming back on again as a partner is amazing, because it's great to have these fresh intelligence partners telling us again, what do we need to know right now? I also love the fact that he brought up the issue of natural disasters, because ultimately, as we know, crisis is not linear, it's layered. It's one crisis on top of another, on top of another. And we can't lose that perspective. So it's a great point that he's made. And as always, we are grateful for him for being on Rise and part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think people have been, the other companies we've spoken to about being intelligence partners this year, and many of which have agreed, I think they saw these data dashes and said, oh, we really want to participate like that, providing a snippet of something we find really important and sharing it with our audience. So having done such a great job, Jan's helped us attract some more intelligence partners, including one a little bit later in the show today. But before that, we've got our headlines. So I was limited to one headline today, and it was not a difficult choice. There were thousands I could have chosen, all pretty much getting at the same thing, right? Hoteliers hope flexible schedules, gig pay can ease labor crisis. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the same thing we've been talking about really since day one of this show. The implications on people of not only the pandemic, but the pandemic's impact on our industry. In the beginning, it was concern that everybody was losing their jobs and what were people going to do during the lockdown if they couldn't work. And now it's, for the last few months, it's been, well, we're opening up again, but nobody wants to come back and work in our industry. Okay, nobody's a bit of an exaggeration. And the reason I chose this headline was flexible schedules, gig pay. Is that the extent, in my opinion, of what the industry can come up with to attract people, not only to get people to come back and work, but to attract new people? And I'm going to ask Jerry about this in a little while. So I'm looking for headlines that say, hey, here are examples of really creative, interesting things that firms are doing, not only to attract people, but to really demonstrate that we've recognized that things need to change. And I, for one, even with all the work I do with different companies, have not yet seen anybody really demonstrate leadership in fundamentally changing the relationship between employer and employee. So I've chosen this basically to bring that up, that we do need to think differently. And hopefully some of our audience can testify to things that they think are working that other firms haven't tried yet.
It's a great point, because ultimately, exactly as you say, this is the Achilles heel. For all of the expectation, all of the anticipation, this is going to be the biggest issue that we as an industry face. And we owe it to especially that frontline younger generation to figure this out and make them feel as valued as the guests, the patrons, whoever's in the industry. So my headline, gotta admit, Demian, I'm going to actually give a pass on this one because I want to buy some time. So without any further ado and any loss of seconds, we're going to go into my video, which is a little bit over 60 seconds, but we're going to make that work. And it's over to the video, please.
It's okay. Look, yeah, I'm going to see you soon, okay? Love you.
Is that you, Mum?
What's a younger version of me?
Mum, can we go to Disneyland?
I've been on my own or reminisce. is it only me out here? Searching for the place to begin it. Is it me? Is it you? Is it fear?
Bloody expired.
So where are you headed?
Singapore for a wedding. Taking the kids to Disneyland Resort.
London. Gonna see someone very special to me.
Hey guys.
Have fun, you two. Try and stop us. Ah, that's the spirit.
'Cause I had a dream that someday I would just fly away.
Here comes the bride.
I've got just the place. Gorgeous.
What a night, Demi. It'll take off.
Oh, we're taking off. And I always knew I couldn't stay.
We'll be there soon.
So I had a dream that I'd just fly away.
An airline commercial. Who would have thought?
Especially for you. But I share this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, as we know, Qantas was one of the first airlines to say they're grounding international travel until the end of actually last year, and now it's carried on. But it's a beautiful representation of people, as we've been saying from the beginning of season 1 of Rise, everyone's missing someone, somewhere, and something. And I love that Qantas wove this all in and made it very clear, very covertly, what their policies are to travel. But it tapped into, let's just make this happen and make the world connect again. So, Demian, for you, with love, an aviation ad to kick off the season.
Yeah, I think their strategy is really interesting about this. Only flying people couldn't testify to vaccination. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, whether they lose business or gain business, or are successful, whether this sets a trend for other ones. So I think it's an interesting decision to track.
Shame. So no tears, Professor.
Okay.
No tears. But as Demian said earlier, we have something very special. We have another intelligence partner, because we found that to make Rise even richer on what you need to know, let's bring in the minds and the hearts that know what's going on. So I'm delighted to share our next Intel video is from Euromonitor, global leaders in data and analysis on industries and consumers across 1,200 cities and 210 countries. Now, Rise followers will recognize this beautiful voice and mind. It's Caroline Bremner, head of travel and tourism research, who joined us as a Rise executive in residence in one of our past seasons. So, Caroline, over to you.
Hi, my name's Caroline Bremner. I'm the head of travel research at Euromonitor International, and I'm delighted to be on Rise to present our latest research in terms of what the recovery looks like for travel and tourism. For those of you that work in the industry, you know that it's a very challenging situation. What we're seeing in terms of the recovery is that 2021 will be the start of the rebound. And we can see from this dark blue line on the chart, which is domestic tourism, that it is very much leading the recovery in the short to mid-term. However, when it comes to international tourism spending, you can see there's a little bit slower sort of recovery because of the challenges that we have in terms of the vaccination rates, the travel bans and restrictions, which we know are, in total disarray. The fact that we have a lack of interoperable digital health systems. However, having said that, we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, where the EU is leading with the COVID digital health certificate, which is great. And even IATA has come out and backed that. Now, when it comes to, what are travel businesses doing to build back better? At Euromonitor, we have like an industry travel survey where we talk to travel businesses and we ask them what their investment priorities are. So alongside digitalization, sustainability is really important. So we see that 3/4 of the travel industry businesses that we spoke to are very interested in sustainability, the need for innovation in that area in terms of customer facing products as well as on the back end. So in terms of those working in the industry, employee support programs are the number one priority. So if you're considering a career in travel and tourism, yes, it's a challenging environment at the moment. However, they're very much looking after their staff in terms of well-being and making sure that things are safe and seamless for customers as well as employees. We also see that actually there's a disconnect between sustainability in terms of, interest level being high, but then only 55% of the industry actually implementing some form of strategy in this area. So that doesn't make much sense. It's a little bit counterintuitive. Everything should be very much focused on, trying to achieve the sustainable development goals and of course being on that 1.5 degrees Celsius path to net zero. So thank you very much for having me today, and of course look forward to sharing more insights as the season progresses.
I find it so interesting, this employee support programs, and I'm gonna, when I have some time, go back and look at previous research they've done. Was that as important pre-pandemic? Or is this a reaction, as we talked just a moment ago, to the issue of the labor issue in the industries? It's suddenly, we have a labor problem, we need to throw some money at this and pay attention to this. Or is it a sincere concern for our labor force? And you know me, I'm skeptical, and so I think it's the former. But I'll be curious to see what Jerry has to say about that.
Is that a technical term, Demian?
It's something. It's something. Hey, I think before we continue, before we bring Jerry on, I want to go back to our poll and see the results from that. Jessica, can you share those results? All right. So I think it's interesting, right? See, taking a flight, the biggest expense here, the greatest effort, the scariest one, as you said, that's what people are saying has made them feel like things are normal. It's not the everyday thing. It's not wearing a mask or dining indoors. It's really, I need this travel to feel like things are normal.
Indeed. It's very much about breaking the bubble in a lot of ways. So very interesting. And thank you, as always, to our viewers for contributing. And apologies for those on Facebook and YouTube Live. You're not able to participate in the polls. So please do register and come onto our Zoom platform, and we'll make sure you are actively part of the conversation. So on to the conversation. Now, I have to admit, I have the professional CV in front of me. I'm going to really battle not to gush on this one, but we are so excited and so honored and so grateful to have as our executive in residence kick off season 4. He's the CEO of Diriyah Gate Development Authority in Saudi Arabia, the vice chairman of Forbes Travel Guide, and the corporate hotelier of the world in 2021. He is known, and again, I'm going to ignore Jerry, the official CV. It's Jerry Inzerillo. He is known as one of the most visionary, creative, honest, decent, and yet humble leaders we have in our tourism and community, especially from the hospitality side. I have known you, sir, from New York to Cape Town to Riyadh and around the world. We are thrilled to have you with us. Thank you for joining us from Riyadh. Marhaba, sir.
Thank you so much. But really, what I'm most famous for is I'm a friend of Anita's. That's what I'm most famous for. And we got the legendary Dr. Hodari from Lausanne. You know, when I was going to hotel college, we didn't have smart PhDs like Dr. Hodari. So thank you, the good Dr. Demian, for your wonderful dedication to our industry, for investing in so many generations of leaders to come. Lausanne is a shining example around the world. Thank you to you and your colleagues. Congratulations to both of you on the 4th season. I'm delighted to be with you all today, and thank you for your very humbling comments. And I send you salam alaikum and greetings from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Well, thank you, Jerry. That was very kind of you to say. I know Anita's got tons of questions, as do I, but I'm going to let her start off.
Okay, Jerry, you know me well enough. You are an expert when it comes to the industry. But one thing I love about you is how honest you have been through this crisis. You and I first interviewed in May on Hospitality Tomorrow last year with over 6,000 people watching. And you've been honest about the crisis and the challenge that it has on leadership, and yet the opportunity that it has. You've gone through many a crisis, whether it's political challenges in South Africa, economic downturns, natural disasters, and you've been stronger for it over 50 years. Why is this an opportunity for future leaders to grasp rather than just continuing as we were in the past?
It's a wonderful question. And let me jump in by saying this. When you're dealing globally, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, with the human condition, everything is fluid, everything is dynamic. But what's universal to the human condition is the sense of welcoming people, a sense of gathering people. We require to share. We require to gather, to get to know each other. But that's interrupted by many different crises, medical crises, environmental crises, economic crises. The learning on this one is that this is one that's so big, so long, that even those of us who have studied this and devoted ourselves to this for decades can start now to see how we may navigate out of this, but the learning curve on this is brilliant. Now, what it teaches us is that even as gigantic and as damaging as this COVID pandemic has been, it doesn't change the fundamental nature of human nature, that people need to gather, they need to share, they need to know one another. So we, even with this, can always maintain a sense of optimism that tourism will be fine. But now we have to study, because this allows us a reset on issues will come up, like sustainability, like human capital, like, are we doing the right thing with each other? Are we doing the right thing with our planet? Are we communicating the right way? Are we respectful? So I think as young leaders out there, students, people new to the industry, this is a gigantic learning curve, but not one of despair. There's a lot of trouble out there. There's a lot of people hurting. But from a leadership point of view, one has to know that you have to navigate the entire tourism community through this, because there will be other interruptions. We pray not as epically global as this one, but it could happen. And what we have to do is keep our cool, be empathetic, rise to the occasion, analyze, lead, and say, we will get through this. And that's exactly what we're doing on this one.
So Jerry, I'm going to follow up and ask you that question. Are we doing the right thing? Are we being respectful to the environment? Are we treating people right? And then this word of reset, which I think is a great word. Are we resetting the industry? Or, I'm a pessimist and I'm skeptical. So I'm saying, I don't really see fundamentally that there's the changes that I think are necessary. Not that I have the answers, but do you see a reset coming?
I do see a reset, but this is going to be a very interesting reset, because this reset has to happen from heads of state, ministers of tourism, and it has to happen from board of directors and CEOs. Normally resets are top down. This one's going to happen anyway, because this reset's going to be a bottom up. It's going to be a once in 100-year reset, where young people are going to lead the change and say, no, we are not taking care of our planet. No, we are being rude to each other. No, we are being judgmental or prejudiced and not inclusive. No, we are not being neighborly. Yes, we love authenticity. Yes, we love uniqueness of culture. Yes, we love expression. Yes, we love our planet. And they're going to demand the reset. So heads of state, ministers of tourism, board of directors, CEO, you better get with the program, because if not, the bottom's going to catch up to you. And that will force the reset to say, what is actually important in our life? Now, If you go back to only the 1980s, where you had a powerful middle class, global middle class. I mean, not China at that time and not India at that time. Well, what did you have to do? You wanted to show your wealth when you had accumulated some status. What did you do? You bought homes, you bought cars, you bought jewelry. And then what did the mother do with her jewelry, her big jewelry? She gave it to her daughter. And the daughter said, great, I'll put it in a safe deposit box. You know what's happening now? The daughter wouldn't be caught dead in the jewelry. That's not who I am. I don't want a big necklace and stuff like that. I'd rather sell the jewelry, put my grandkids through college, support my local philanthropy, my local church, and then travel with the kids. One of the biggest trends of the last 20 years is 3-generational travel. You know why? People were younger, more affluent, and said, I don't want to see my grandkids after shul or mosque or church. So I'm going to bribe my kids. All right, you decide where you want to go. Australia, Turkey, Saudi, America. But grandma and grandpa got to come for the week, right? So what happened? Families grouped together. Grandma and grandpa paid. The families were together. Great. Learned cultures. Had family time, qualitative. These are beautiful things. That's a great trend, right? So now what the luxury is not jewelry. The luxury is time. The luxury is being with people you love, people you admire. The luxury is sharing things that are real, emotional, authentic. And that's why travel will boom in bigger numbers, because people need and want that connectivity. But this generation that's coming up are much more real. So board of directors, CEOs, you better get ready, because this generation of great, sensitive global leaders are coming up in your rearview mirror, and you will either address their needs or they will demand them of you.
Jerry, I'm going to build on that if I can, please, because you've always been fabulous and with great grace and elegance, showing your teeth as you've just done. And building on what Demian was saying, that we're here at AHIC, and hopefully you're going to be joining us, even if it's virtually. And you've got a group of leaders, CEOs talking about the future of the industry. But what you're saying is that everyone needs to be held accountable. They need to be held accountable, because it's not even a re-engineering of the industry. It's a restart. 18,000 aircraft were grounded at the height of the pandemic. So we're actually restarting the industry. If I were to ask you, what are the 3 metrics you are looking for to ensure and to hold accountable that our industry is literally shifting the needle and not just talking about it? What are those 3 metrics?
It's a super question. One is a political metric, and that is that there has to be a mandate on the alignment of heads of state and their global ministers of tourism to support the global tourism community, which pre-pandemic levels was almost 11% of GDP and one of the largest employers in the world. In other words, if you look back, and the wonderful Dr. Hodari can verify this, if you look back 30 years ago to 1990, and you analyze how many of the 238 countries had ministries of tourism, in 30 years, that number has almost doubled. Why? Because what's happening is that heads of states now know that tourism is good for cultural preservation. It's good for economic effects. It's fabulous for employment, because you don't need a PhD in applied mathematics from Harvard to come into the industry. It's one of the least prejudicial industries in the world, where you can move globally based upon your passion and your willingness to serve. So if you're boy, girl, man, woman, old, young, straight, gay, Polish, Catholic, Muslim, it doesn't matter. If you serve, you can move ahead with greater levels of equality and lesser levels of prejudice than almost every other industry. All right, but now what we realized is that in Saudi Arabia's very effective leadership of the G20, the crown prince was forward-thinking enough for the first time in the history of the G20 to allow a platform of T20 with the tourism ministers. And thanks to the very inspired leadership of His Excellency Ahmed Al-Khatib, the Saudi Minister of Tourism, got all the tourism ministers to agree on a digital health certificate, on commitments to sustainability and commitments to strengthening and rebooting 100 million jobs in tourism. All of them agreed. All of them left with consensus. They went home after the G20 and couldn't get consensus from their heads of state. I would suggest to you that that's a problem. And that mandate is one of the three benchmarks that has got to be reversed. The second thing is we're already there. The entire global tourism community now know that we are interconnected. And then the other thing now is that all the CEOs of the major companies have got to support the academic institutions on hospitality around the world. We have to step up training. We have to step up hospitality. We have to step up self-esteem and getting people ready, because we cannot continue to go the way we're going, losing more of our graduates than retaining our graduates. And that's why we have to step up the commitment to training and support our hospitality functions around the world in terms of training in academia, and get ready for people to have a robust global tourism community that will be 12, 13, 14, 15% of global GDP. Those are imperative mandates.
I'm going to jump on Jerry's third point about the hospitality schools. I saw a recent study that was done, just came out, showing that enrollment in hospitality programs across the US, and I think it might be the world, is down. First year that we're starting to see decreased enrollment, decreased applications to these schools, while applications to other universities is still increasing. And I think it's reflective of the negative image the industry has recently in terms of the way labor is being treated or perceived to be treated by employers. So we have a problem of people leaving the industry that we got to get them back in. We have to attract new people to the industry. Meanwhile, we've got huge projects like the one you're in charge of developing that are going to need more labor. So at some point, it's going to have to give. Something drastic is going to have to happen. What's your plan to, personally, that you see we can use to attract people and keep them in? What's going to fundamentally have to change? Is it just, like I showed before the headline, is it just money and more flexible hours, or what is it? I know that you've described yourself as a servant leader. You've talked about this word servant. It's not about being subservient, which I thought was great, but it is an image that people have. So what are we going to do about this?
Well, it's a great question. So there's the art and science to that answer. The science is that the industry globally has got to take a real hard look at compensation and on issues of, and this is where you need a political mandate, because it may be a minimum wage, it may be a declaration of tips, but there's got to be a tremendous reboot of global compensation when it comes to all aspects of tourism. And that may even require some governmental subsidies at some particular point. I mean, governments are very happy to put in city, state, and federal taxes on occupancy taxes, and then divert it for other reasons that are not in the industry. Whatever taxes come from the industry in terms of occupancy tax or sales tax should be put back into the development of the industry and not put to offset gasoline tax or tobacco tax or things that have no direct effect on tourism. So that's another big thing that's going to be on the list of ministers. And so having said that, now the second thing is the self-esteem part and development. But now there's a story that, in certainly the American context, if you go back only 40 years, that's all. You go back to the 1980s and you're at a dinner party and women were not by and large leaders within the global hospitality community. And women circa 1980 certainly were a tiny component of enrollment in hospitality colleges. When I went to hotel school at UNLV, I would have loved to have gone to Luzon, but I wasn't one of the fancy kids. So when I went to UNLV with Moses 100 years ago, there was no Anitas in that program. All right. And if you look at the industry, women were stereotypically pigeonholed into two positions, what was called in those days personnel director or executive housekeeper. And they weren't even executive in those days. That's the housekeeper. Okay, well, that's very stereotypical. Okay, now you look at women all throughout the industry. Now, circa 1980, you didn't have a lot of women in. So if you sat at a dinner table with your peers in all communities throughout the world, and you said, what does your son do for a living? My son's a doctor. What does your son do for a living? My son's an engineer. What does your son do? My son's a lawyer. What does your son do? He's a cook. Oh, well, when did he get out of prison? Or I'm sure everything will work out eventually, right? Now, you reverse it 40 years later. What does your son do or daughter? They have a doctorate in applied mathematics from Harvard. What does your son do? Oh, he's an engineer for Boeing, graduated MIT. What does your daughter do? She's concierge at the Pierre Hotel in New York. What does your son do? He's executive chef at the Burlock. You know what? The entire dinner conversation is going to be about the daughter who's the concierge and the chef who's at the Burlock, because they're legitimate professions that people love and they're interesting. The problem is that with the wave of tech, young people now demand a higher work balance relationship. I'm not working weekends. I'm not working holidays. I'm not working Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year's and Ramadan. I'm not doing that. So we have to attract people, and we may have to deploy our workforce where there's more shifting, where we address that balance. So if you look at Clay Door, one of the great institutions in the world, where you have to earn those keys, the most fabulous, one of the best bodies of service-oriented people in the world, if not the best body, is Clay Door, right? That's a great profession. People are growing up now, wanting to be professional concierges. I would suggest to you that's a great trend that's only really blossoming in the last 20 years. These are good things because people want engagement. They want to be in culture and heritage. And that's our line of defense against the tech industries. Now, we always kept a line of defense against banking, insurance, law, because people liked that every day something was new in our industry. Every day it changed. Every day you met interesting people. And especially if you went into the higher levels of 4-star, 5-star hotels. But the tech industry now has out-glamorized us, and we have to fight that back in which to keep our people.
Great
Thank
point.
you. Anita, should we try to take a question or two from our audience?
I think we should. We've got a couple of minutes left, but let's do that.
All right. Grace, got a question for us from someone who's been watching the show?
Yes, I do have a question. The first question is, Jerry, do you have any advice for all of the students who are questioning their career choice?
Yes, my advice is do not question your career choice. Stay with hospitality. It's one of the fastest growth industries in the world. It has the least amount of institutional prejudice. It is global, and you can grow and ascend at the pace of your own passions and your own commitment. If you love to serve, if you love interacting with people, do not question. Go full blast. Jump in, enjoy the water. Let's go. This is a great profession. It's a global industry. It's timeless. You're welcome to move fast. In the old days, the average, you realize you go back to 1970, only 50 years ago. The average age of a 5-star general manager was 59 years old. 50 years ago. The average age of a 5-star general manager now is 34 years old. You don't have, You can go as fast as your heart desires without prejudice, and a global industry that allows you to travel, meet people, interact. So do not question. Go and become a leader.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly agree with you and say, with all the people that are leaving the industry, those that stay or join the industry, they're going to have even faster career paths right now because they're showing the dedication to it. So I fully agree. One more quick question, Grace?
Yes, we have a question from one of our loyal viewers, Shrey, who says, do you foresee empathy being a casualty in our path to recovery while it is a likely catalyst to improvement?
Can I have that first part again, please?
Yes, of course. Do you foresee empathy being a casualty in our path to recovery while it is a likely catalyst to improvement?
Not only do I see empathy as not a casualty, empathy is going to be a base requirement again. You go up to the wonderful Isidore Shaw, be 90 years old this month, October, coming up. You ask him, you build the finest large luxury company in the world, Four Seasons. What was the magic formula? No magic formula. Golden rule. Do unto others as you would expect them to do unto them. What is one of the principal DNAs of golden rule? Empathy. Now, you talk about another great leader, Miss Oprah Winfrey. You know what Oprah Winfrey will say? I've done 35,000 interviews. Everybody go on YouTube and watch our Harvard commencement speech. And you know what I found? People want to know, do you see me? Do you hear me? Did what I say mean anything to you? That's empathy. When you see your guests, you have to see them. You have to hear them. You have to feel them. When you're working with your team, they're not below you. They're not subordinates. They're peers. You're in it together, right? That's empathy. I'm with you. I hear you. I see you. I know what you want. So I believe that not only will empathy not be compromised, I think it's a prerequisite, fundamental component of DNA of hospitality. And that will only enrich as these wonderful young people demand a greater sense of empathy and connection.
I must say, Jerry, as we pull this together, hence your usage of the word servant leader are just so true to who you are, because I agree that never has our industry and leadership in our industry been more sensitive to the needs, especially of the front line of our industry, to make sure that they stay with us and stay inspired to carry the industry forward, because we are blessed to be in it. And the industry has become a victim of circumstance, but we move forward together. So I must tell you, sir, before we kicked off, Demian said behind scenes that one day when he grows up, he wants to be Jerry Inzerillo. So I can completely understand that. And you made a commitment when you and I met in Riyadh in May, when you said, no group in our industry is more important to you than the students. So thank you for being with us on Rise and being that voice of leadership that we needed to kick off season 4. And I'll hand it to Demian to take it to the close.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to first extend an invitation for you to come to Lausanne. I know you didn't come to study there, and I wanted to show you that it's not just a school for fancy people anymore. It's for really dedicated people who are, spending lots of money, lots of time, lots of energy to become leaders in the industry. And I think you are an inspiration for them. So hopefully you'll come and join us one day.
I will.
Bye.
I look forward to coming back. I would definitely do that. And I said it lovingly and affectionately that at the time it was fancy because it was everybody's high benchmark, and it still is. All of us globally you say Lausanne, immediately you have two senses, a sense of pride and a sense of legitimacy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And thanks again for coming on Rise. Hopefully our audience are as inspired as I am by everything that you said. And we appreciate your time and we appreciate everything.
Good luck, everybody. This is your career. Come visit us in Saudi Arabia. And as we say here in Saudi, only one diraya. Thank you.
Loving shukran, Jerry. Thank you so much.
Good. Nice to be with you all. God bless you.
Bye, Jerry.
What a great man. What a beautiful, beautiful heart and mind at that.
Yeah, very eloquent. And you know, one of the things that I like about Jerry is you believe that what he says is actually what he thinks. It's not corporate speak. He's not saying this because we've got to say this. You feel that it really comes from the heart. He really believes this. He really loves the industry. He loves his career. And I think that's the inspirational part. It's not just what he said, but how he says it and how he believes it. So appreciate that.
Right into our next segment.
Yeah, it's time for Grace. What are we debating today?
Today we are debating, has our industry been a role model during the crisis? Anita, take it away.
I have to say, Demian, I think there was that hesitant pause because they were waiting for you to say total knockout.
Right. I never can remember if I'm supposed to say it or not. All right.
Do I believe our industry is a role model? I know you well enough, Grouch. You're going to say we're not doing enough. We haven't helped enough. We're not helping the front line enough. However, we walked into this crisis, all of us blind. We didn't know how long it was going to be. We didn't know the impact. We didn't know the sustained nature of it. 519 days on. Everyone in the industry and out has been, like Jerry said, on a learning curve. And all we were doing was trying to cope, ultimately trying to cope. However, during that, why are we a case study? Are there areas we could have been better in? No question, but that's hindsight. That's 2020. We were blind. Yet still, we as an industry stepped up, and we stepped up like never before. If we look at it, the support of frontliners, hotels across the world, giving up hundreds of thousands of rooms and millions of meals to frontliners, convention centers from Cape Town to Madrid to London, turning into hospitals and vaccination centers, attractions redeploying staff as COVID monitors to make sure everyone's safe, destinations creating food kits so that people at home could explore the world through food as families, airlines, exactly as Carolyn said, leading technology like IATA Travel Pass, making sure that we all have mobility in our hands, events companies like Bench Events, kicking off events, pivoting quickly to electronic, 7,000 people in the first event in May last year, and Rise, our global conversation. All of these are case studies of people stepping up and doing the best we can as an industry when we didn't know what on earth was going on. So, are there ways we could have improved? Absolutely. Are you going to be a grouch? Absolutely. However, I don't want to eclipse the good that has come out of our industry stepping up at a time when we all needed to find some sense of normality in an abnormal world. Over to you.
Oh, there's still time for me. Thanks. So I want to say, yes, I agree with all that. In fact, most of those things or in some cases you mentioned during the first 3 seasons of Rise, we brought up all those things because they were great examples of our industry stepping up. But are we a role model? How can we say we're a role model when we ignore our own people? Think about it, the mass layoffs, even as stocks were climbing, the furloughs, the lack of confidence that it gave to employees, the lack of training in many cases at how to deal with guests and health issues when restaurants or hotels or other businesses reopen. The lack of new training, the lack of appreciation for all these people was basically, we're going to shut down. You're all fired, and when we can, we'll hire you back and go deal with this on your own. So yes, right. If we really were a role model, our industry's #1 research. Look at all the websites of hotel companies and hospitality companies. Our employees are our greatest resource, right? This is just talk. Because as soon as it came down to it, everybody's laid off without any kind of discussion about the implications for them later on. And of course, there are examples of companies that have done a little bit better, but largely we've ignored them. And so how can we be considered a role model when not only are people leaving, but they're not coming back? We've said, okay, come back, we're ready for you again. No, thanks. Don't want to come back to this industry. You didn't treat me well. You didn't train me well. You didn't pay me well. You didn't respect me. You didn't care about me. I'm not coming back. So we've done great things, but we're not a role model when our #1 resource says goodbye.
Gross generalizations, but I'll give you that. This is TKO. But as we know, terms like everyone, everywhere do not apply because we all know companies, even leaders were at fear of losing their jobs. It's not just those on the front line. So I hear what you're saying. I appreciate your dramatic tactics, but I don't buy the argument. And let's see what the audience says.
All right. Grace?
Here we go.
Okay, everyone, it is time to choose your winner. Do you agree with Anita that we walked in blind, didn't know what the impact would be? It's a huge learning curve and we're all just trying to cope. The frontliners were given rooms, meals, staff were redeployed, leading technology. Or do you agree with Demian that they did do a lot to help, but when we are ignoring our own people, we cannot be a role model? There's been mass layoffs, lack of training, and telling people to go and deal with this on your own.
Let's see.
All right, let's see if the people.
Wow. I am amazed. Your family's great at voting, Demian.
So, look, I think what it's telling you is everybody sees all the great things the industry does, but there's a lot more to be done, especially about how we treat our own. And hopefully that was a discussion with Jerry. That was my slide earlier. I think this is going to be a recurring theme, not only across Rise next season, but across the industry going forward. Hey, in this light, we've got something new that we wanted to announce to everybody. If we can show that, Jessica, the next slide. So something new we're going to start on the next episode is our career opportunity of the week. We're asking if you've got some interesting career opportunity for that you're looking to fill, right? Let us know. Send us an email to riseweekly2020@gmail.com. Let us know the title of the job, where it is, an approximate salary, and most importantly, the qualifications. What do people need to have in their background? Either it's education, work experience, language, etc., personality that you want for that. And we'll choose one each week to feature, and we'll get in touch with you if we've chosen yours, just to make sure it's still open. And for our audience, you know, even if it's not for you, it gives you an idea what the industry is looking for. So hopefully you'll enjoy that in our next episode.
I love this. It's a great compass as to where is the industry needing new talent. I think it's a great thing that we can add to the mix. And as we do that, we wrap up in our last 2 minutes. We've got a great segment on October the 4th. We're talking about sustainability. Seriously, we've got 2 fabulous leaders from around the world, the CEO of 6 Senses Hotels and Resorts and Spas, and the co-founder and chairman of Intrepid. Joining us, we've got them from across the world, including Daryl, who's going to be coming in from Australia, which is very cool. So we look forward to that, October 4th. Put that in your schedules, everyone. Ideally on Zoom, so you can participate in all the voting and all the conversation, or you can watch us live on YouTube and on Facebook. But until then, before I hand over to Professor Hodari, as always, from all of us at Rise, stay safe, stay confident, stay hopeful, and stay with Rise. Professor, to the close.
Yeah, I'm going to make a little special closing today. I'm going to wish my mother a happy birthday. I'm not going to tell you how old she is, because last time you told me I shouldn't do that. Mom, sorry I'm not there. I know you're with family, and we'll talk to you later. So have a great birthday. And to everybody else, have a great next 2 weeks. Look forward to seeing you on the 4th of October. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.